All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the next in our EQUIP specialty series. Today, we're going to be talking about the program year 5 gastroenterology, the GI bundles that have been added. Um, uh, this is a great opportunity to learn because we added a significant number of bundles this year, some of which do fall into the GI space. This year, Equip is adding 68 new bundles, I believe. And it means that it's really important that when the sign up starts July 1 to September 1, it is really important that you run your opportunity, you look and consider what's available, and really think strategically as you sign up for Equip. Um, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Olivia Simon, who is going to give a short presentation on Equip and an overview of the new bundles, and then we will answer any questions that anybody has with regards to Equip or the particular episodes that are brand new. Olivia, it is all yours.
Thank you, Jean. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. So, as Jean mentioned, MedChi has been hosting a series of EQIP specialty webinars to kind of just walk through the program, particularly for people who may be new to EQIP, and go over some of the different specialties that have grown for 2026. So, today we are going to be focusing on GI. So before we get into the program details, I just wanted to start with understanding how EQUIP came to be. So as a result of the total cost of care model, Maryland practitioners were left out of national Medicare value-based payment programs. And so because of this, the HSCRC created this voluntary episode quality improvement program specifically for practitioners in Medicare, and it started back in 2022. So again, this was designed specifically for Maryland practitioners to give them an opportunity to participate in value-based payment programs. And calendar year 2026, next year will be the 5th performance year that EQIP has been operating. So what is Maryland's Episode Quality Improvement Program, or EQIP? Again, EQIP is a completely voluntary program, and it is also an advanced alternative payment model that's offered to Maryland generalist, specialist, or other CMS approved practitioners. Essentially, by participating in EQIP, practitioners will be engaged in care transformation and value based payment through an episode based approach. So, what this means is EQIP's participants will be held accountable for both cost and quality targets in one or more clinical episodes. So before we get into the program details a little bit further, I wanted to just touch on EQIP as an advanced alternative payment model. So I mentioned this earlier, and if you're familiar with CMS's quality payment program, there are two different tracks. So one is the merit-based incentive payment system, or MIPS, and then the other is this advanced alternative payment model, or AAPM. EQIP falls under this AAPM track of the quality payment program, and therefore practitioners who are participating in EQIP are on the AAPM track, and they are considered qualifying APM participants, also known as QPs. So the reason I bring this up is because QPs are exempt from MIPS reporting and MIPS payment adjustments. And they also will currently receive a higher Medicare physician fee schedule update than non-QPs. So right now, this update is set at a 0.75% qualifying APM conversion factor. So this is an annual increase to the Medicare physician fee schedule. I do want to note that the APM incentive, so this conversion factor and any APM incentive payments are set by Congress, so these are subject to change, but this is what is in place for the time being and for 2026. So again, by participating in EQIP, you would get the MIPS exemption and this higher Medicare physician fee schedule update. It does not depend on your performance in the program. It is simply for just participating in the program, your engagement, you would get the exemption and the updated conversion factor. So now let's talk a little bit more about the EQIP program itself and how it operates. So each year there is an annual enrollment opportunity. So that is what will open officially next week on Tuesday, July 1st. The enrollment period for 2026 will begin. This is July through August of each year, where practitioners can enroll in an EQIP entity. An EQIP entity is just one or more practitioners that are going to participate in the program together. When practitioners enroll in an entity, the entity will select clinical episodes that they would like to participate in. These episodes will trigger when a specific Medicare beneficiary or procedure is performed. Then the second element is a target price is set. So what EQIP will do is they will go back to its baseline period, which is calendar year 2019, and they will look at all of the costs associated with the episodes that were triggered in the baseline period, and they will assign the entity a unique or average cost or target price per episode it enrolls in. So this is the goal price that the entity is trying to be less than in order to generate savings within the program. Then finally, the performance is assessed. So EQIP is going to use claims data to assess the cost and quality performance of the EQIP entity. As I mentioned, the target price will be used to determine if savings are generated. The total performance year cost will be compared to this target price that is set for the entity. And then if savings are achieved, any earned incentive payments will be due to the EQIP entity. So I'm going to break down that process a little bit further, starting with the selection of the EQIP episodes. So as I mentioned on the last slide, during this enrollment period, when an entity decides to enroll, they will select the clinical episodes that they would like to participate in. And this is based on their episode volume in the baseline period. So there are some thresholds required within EQIP's baseline period for the entity to be eligible to select a specific episode category. This is what Jean was mentioning earlier. If you are interested in enrolling in EQIP, if you send me or the EQIP inbox your individual NPIs, we can run an analysis to determine your baseline episode volume and determine which episodes you may be eligible to select. So each episode is going to consist of three main components. The first is a trigger. So each episode will have unique trigger codes. These are either ICD-10 codes, CPT, or HCPCS codes that initiate the start of an episode. So essentially, these codes are just indicating that a patient has a particular condition or underwent a particular procedure. Then a look back window is established for the entity. For the episode. This is the time period prior or before that trigger event when all of the relevant costs associated with the episode will be included. And then there is also a close period window. This is the time period after following the trigger event when all of the relevant costs associated with the episode will be included. So for performance year 5, calendar year 2026, we have added quite a few new episodes. All of the EQIP episodes are organized by the following clinical categories. But I do want to mention that there's no limitation to the type of practitioner that wishes to enroll in EQIP under one of the following episodes. The episodes are just organized within these categories. So today we are focusing on the GI episodes. So as you can see here on the screen, there were 4 GI episodes that were offered in PY4 2025. These 4, and then we do have 7, I believe, 7 new GI episodes that have been added for next year. So we're really excited about the growth. One thing that is currently being developed is the PY5 episode playbook. So essentially, what you are going to see when we have that playbook available to you is you're going to see a breakdown of all of the episodes that are offered for PY5, along with their trigger codes, their look back window, and their closed period window. So again, that's under development right now. I don't have that available for you at this time. However, I'm going to show you an example now of one of the new GI episodes so you can get a better understanding of how the trigger codes look and how the episode windows look within the playbook. So again, this is just an example for Crohn's disease. So these are the trigger codes for this particular episode. Again, you will have this information for all of the episodes. This is just one example. So here you can see the specific ICD-10 codes that would trigger a Crohn's disease episode. So again, this is through claims data, and this is for Medicare patients only. When a practitioner in EQIP bills one of the following codes, the episode would initiate. Then, once that episode has been initiated, the following episode length is used to determine the total episode costs for the entity. So here you can see in the middle is the episode trigger. So again, on the last slide, that would be the submission of one of those ICD-10 codes. And then you can also see the look back period and the close period windows on the screen here. So on the left side, you can see that for Crohn's disease, there's a 30-day look back window, meaning once that trigger happens, EQIP will go back 30 days prior to the trigger event when counting all of the relevant costs associated with that trigger. And then the close period window for this episode is till the end of the study period or the end of 2026. So that means for the entire year, all of the relevant costs associated with this episode will be included. Again, more examples to come when the playbook is released, and I will share that with you all when it does become available. So now that we kind of understand how an episode is initiated and how that episode length is determined, I want to touch on what's actually included within the episode costs for each episode. So the total relevant costs for a single episode are all Medicare Parts A and B claim payments for the beneficiary for services that are rendered within that episode length and considered relevant to the episode. So typically your relevant costs are either going to be services or costs that are clinically associated with the condition or the treatment of the episode, and this is regardless of who provides them. So here on the screen, you can see a few examples that are typically included within the relevant costs. I do want to note that when the playbook becomes available, there will be episode workbooks linked within the playbook. The workbooks are just Excel sheets with all of the related information to the episode. So you'll see the trigger codes, the links, but you'll also see relevant codes and associations that would also be included within the episode costs. I also want to emphasize that the triggers and all of the relevant costs are derived directly from the Medicare fee-for-service claims. So you don't have to do any additional reporting to track any of the costs or the episodes. EQIP is just using claims data as a part of your standard billing practices. So the next thing I want to touch a little bit more on is the target price. So I mentioned this earlier during the overview, but again, each entity is assigned its own unique target price or goal price per episode it's selected. And again, the way that they determine this target price is they go back to the baseline year and they look at the average total relevant episode cost among all the episodes that were attributed to the care partners or practitioners within your entity during the baseline period. I mentioned this earlier, but EQIP's baseline period is 2019. However, I do want to note that in PY5, the emergency department episodes will use 2023. So that won't affect any of the non-ED episodes. They will still use 2019. So during the performance year, at the beginning of the performance year, preliminary target prices will be available to all participants. And then the final target will be made available at the end of the program year because they will make some adjustments based on inflation. and other elements. So again, the performance year episode costs, all of those total relevant costs that are determined within each episode length, they will be compared to this target price to determine if the entity has generated savings within the program. So that's the first part of the program, all things related to the episodes and their costs. The next element of this program is the quality metrics. So each EQIP entity is subject to a quality score adjustment as required as a part of EQIP's advanced APM status. So for performance year 5, the 3 quality metrics that EQIP will be using are advanced care plan, medication reconciliation, and BMI. The way it works is that for each attributed episode, the HSCRC will assess whether these 3 measures were performed once by any practitioner within the year preceding the end of the episode period. There are a few important things to note here. One is the quality metrics are also measured through claims data. So on the upcoming slides, I'll have a little bit more information about the quality metrics. And the specific submission codes that would need to be included on the claims in order to receive credit. I also want to emphasize that the quality measures only need to be billed once, and this can be by any practitioner. So for example, if you have an EQIP entity and your practitioner or you are attributed this EQIP episode, and that Medicare patient goes to see another provider, maybe their primary care provider, within the year preceding the end of that episode period, and their primary care provider completes advanced care planning and includes the appropriate submission codes within the claims, that will actually satisfy your requirement for that episode. Even if that primary care provider is completely unrelated to you or not even an EQIP, it will still satisfy. So that is a pretty neat feature about this. But again, all of this is through claims data. So the most important thing is that you are aware of the submission codes and billing them as appropriate. So as I mentioned, here's a little overview of each metric, starting with advanced care planning. I'm not going to go through all of this information. I will share this recording and slide deck with you after the meeting so you can review it at your own pace. But here's a little bit more information about each one of the metrics. And again, most importantly, over here on the right are the submission codes. So one of the 2 codes would need to be submitted in order to receive credit for advanced care planning. Same thing with current medications. Here there are one of 3 codes that would need to be submitted in order to receive credit. And then lastly, for BMI, there are 5 potential codes that could be submitted to receive credit. So again, please look over this at your own time. And if you have any questions relating to billing for the quality metrics or quality metrics in general, feel free to reach out to myself or to the EQIP inbox. So the next thing that I want to go over briefly is how is the incentive payment determined after all of this? So we talked about some of the main elements of the program, the costs and the quality, but where does the incentive payment come into play? I've broken this down into 5 elements to kind of explain this to you all today. So the first step is going to be to assess the performance period results. So at the end of the performance year, the total performance year episode costs will be compared to that target price. And if the episode costs are less than the target price across all the episodes in which the entity is participating in, then savings are achieved. That's step number 1. You get a check and you can keep moving on. Next, you will also need to ensure that at least 3% of savings are achieved. This is just to ensure that your savings are considered statistically significant. So once that's good, check, move on to the next element. If there are any savings from a prior year, you must also offset them before moving forward within this methodology. So if you're new to EQIP, this wouldn't apply to you in your first year. But essentially what this means is, let's just say you participate in EQIP in consecutive years, and in the previous year, your total episode costs were actually greater than your target price, meaning you did not generate savings. You would have to offset those savings before moving forward in this methodology. So that's the first step. Then we get into the shared savings element. So each care partner's target price is going to be compared at the state level and ranked on efficiency. So our lower cost practitioners are going to be in the higher tier, higher cost practitioners in the lower tier. You can see here on the screen, there each tier reflects a different percent of savings that will be due to the EQIP entity. So if you are in the highest tier, you would get to keep 80% of your savings, and 20% of your savings would be retained by Medicare. If you're on the other end of things, you would get to keep 50% of your savings and 50% would be retained by Medicare. So that's step number 2, determining the percent that you get to keep within the shared savings. Then the third step is the clinical quality score. So whatever the incentive payment is at this time, 5% of that will be withheld from the entity pending quality assessment. So the HSCRC is going to determine your performance rates for those 3 metrics that I shared on the last few slides. And based on how well you performed the 3 quality measures, you will get to keep up to that full 5% back. If you fall somewhere in the middle in regards to quality metrics, maybe you only get to keep 3% and you lose out on 2% of your incentive payment at that time. But that is where quality comes into play. Then the next step is this incentive payment cap. There is an incentive payment cap that is 25% of the average care partner physician fee schedule expenditures for the preceding calendar year. So the entity's incentive payment cannot exceed that. And then lastly, whatever amount we have is the final incentive payment that is paid in full approximately 9 to 12 months after the end of the performance year. And this is paid to the payment remission source that's indicated by the entity during the enrollment period. Once EQIP sends out the incentive payments, the entity can distribute the payments to the individual care partner however it desires. So the last thing that I want to touch on today is inadequate performance within EQIP. So the great thing about EQIP is the risk is taken at the state level. So as a result, EQIP entities are not expected to repay CMS as a result of inadequate performance. However, the HSC has created the following policies to ensure that EQIP drives meaningful improvements. So the first policy I briefly touched on during the incentive payment methodology is this DIS savings policy. So there's 2 components. The first is annual accountability. So again, I mentioned this during the methodology on the last slide, but prior to moving forward with your incentive payment, EQIP entities are required to offset any DIS savings from the prior performance years. And then there's another part of this savings policy that says if an entity generates DIS savings in 2 consecutive performance years, and it's in the lower 2 terciles of that tiered shared savings rate, it will have to sit out of EQIP for 1 year before being able to re-enroll in the future. There's also a catastrophic quality performance policy. So if your EQIP entity's performance rate for any of the 3 quality metrics is below the 20th percentile benchmark in Maryland, for 2 consecutive program years, the entity would be removed from the program for at least 1 year before being able to re-enroll. So just wanted to kind of let you know that those 2 policies do exist. And again, the great thing about EQIP is the risk is at the state level. So the risk is not taken at the individual practitioner level. So most importantly, I just want to end on today by again announcing that enrollment for Performance Year 5 calendar year 2026 will officially open next Tuesday, or I guess this upcoming Tuesday, July 1st. And it will run until the very end of August. That Friday, the 29th, is when it will officially close. So please email the EQIP inbox. The address is listed, the email address is here on the screen, or myself for more information regarding eligibility or next steps. And you can also visit the CRISP Learning System for more information. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, I actually do have a question. I think You said this at the beginning, but did you say that for some of the new episode types that we could get a sense of like how much volume we have in the baseline for those?
Yes. So if you email either myself or the Equip inbox here on the email address on the screen, if you include all of your practitioners' MPIs, they can run an opportunity analysis and it will include all of the new episodes for 2026 and show you the baseline volume breakdown.
Okay, thank you.
And
Yep.
and and Katie, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. I would really encourage everybody to do that. Even if they've been in the program before, I would do it because there's so many new episodes. And the other thing I would suggest is if you get it and you want to sit down with Olivia or myself or maybe Crystal or somebody from CRISP, we're happy to do it. And we can also even give you some strategies on maybe how you break up your equip entities because you might want to separate your equip entities out a little bit as well. But we can have those discussions. I mean, we're here to help you. So if you need anything, just let us know.
Thanks.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions?
All right. Well, thanks, Olivia. Great job as always. And we will get the recording up. So if anybody wants to review it later on, let us know.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.